Virgin.
Beauty.
Bitch. Podcast. Inspiring women to overcome social stereotypes and share unique life experiences without fear of being defiantly different. Your hosts, Christopher and Heather. Let's talk, shall we?
2024. Yeah, every year you want to improve and do something new and engaging, especially in our line of work with our podcast. Heather and I came together 7 years ago now to do this podcast together, and it predicated on our interest in the feminine, which is not a usual thing for two people to come together and try to start a podcast over, but we did. And we named it the Virgin Beauty Bitch podcast because that is an arc that all women go through their lives, whether or not they acknowledge it or not, or think about it or not. And the first, obviously, chapter in that, the Virgin. So over the year, we want to actually spend time through the equinox in the spring and the fall and the winter and go over these three archetypes: the Virgin for spring, beauty for fall, bitch for winter. And with the spring coming up, obviously, the Virgin is going to be the thing we're going to focus on. And we thought, hey, if we're going to talk to people about this important period in their lives, hey, let us come out first and expose ourselves as to what our experience have been with this word, virgin. So that's what we're going to be doing with this little episode and video. So take it away, Heather. How would you want to start this episode?
Yeah, I mean, as Christopher said, we have been doing this for quite some time. And when we initially met, we knew that there was something very special about these three words, that the virgin, the beauty, and the bitch each carry such weight over a woman's life. And really, the heart of what we do is to take the power out of these words, the power that they may hold over you, and instead give them a new meaning, a new definition that is cultivated alongside you. So I think when it comes to virginity and how women interact with that concept and really what it means to them, um, often I think that we think it's one and done or come and gone or lost and never to be found again. And you're going to see a lot on our show, just some really amazing guests to even dive into what does virginity mean? What does it mean to people of different sexual orientations? What does it mean for different parts of, your mind, your heart, your soul, and certainly also the body? So all of that is what's to come for VBB in March in the spring equinox. And the journey that Christopher and I want to take you on today is a little bit of a fun ride of what our virgin experience was like, or the losing or gaining thereof. So we wanted to, kick this off with a little bit of a reveal from each of us. When, for most people that I've talked to, that losing of this moment, and we invite all of you listeners to let us know what that definition means for you. We're not here to tell you what it is. We're here to tell you what it was to us at a certain point in our life. And to show our vulnerable side, to show a piece of each of our personal sexual history, and not only what it meant in the lead up to that moment, in that moment, and post that moment. So I am very excited because I've never heard Christopher's virgin story, so this is going to be brand new for me too, and vice versa for him. Although we did dabble a little bit when we were thinking about what to do with this show, so I think that we'll be able to do a little bit of cross comparisons of what it was like between the two of us, very individualistic experiences for a man, and what it was like for me as a young woman.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note is that this experience may be common to all, but it's different according to the genders, or we make it out to be socially anyway. And I think for anyone to really grasp the moment that this, whatever it is, gift or burden is transitioned in our life, you have to go backwards and you have to understand each individual's past, because your past is what brings you to this moment and creates a story for you and that moment. My past was heavily religious. My mother is very, very devout Christian. So I grew up under some very, very strict, very, very strict laws. Thou shalt not drink, thou shalt not dance, thou shalt not blah, 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 blah. And mixed into all of that was thou shalt not even think about it.
God
So
is watching.
so that was the cocoon I was brought up in. However, nature has its own plan. And when the hormones of teens start churning in your body, it doesn't matter what God says. Okay. there's there's something about your nature that needs to be released and experienced. So, I mean, that started for me in my teens, obviously. And I was, I was horribly, had no confidence in myself in my teens. And when it came to relationships with girls, I was, I was horrible. I couldn't even say hello without feeling like crawling under, some rock somewhere. I just had no self-confidence. This is the way I grew up, was not having that kind of self-confidence in myself. So my virginity story didn't really transpire until in my 20s. That I was a late bloomer, if to use that term. And for me, it wasn't me who initiated it, obviously, because I just didn't have it in me to do that. I had the will and the desire, but not the action to go ahead and do that myself. I used to catch a bus at about 3 blocks from my house, and every time I'd show up at this bus stop, maybe once a week, there was this woman looking at me out her apartment window as I waited for the bus. And cool, you're feeling it. Hey, she's checking me out. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
across the road. All right.
Right. And then one day she yells out the window and catches my attention and starts a conversation. And I don't remember all the details as to how it is that we actually connected, but she was like super worldly compared to me, Mr. Church guy. Um, she had lots of experience. I had zero, obviously. And I remember she had this pink VW bug, and it had fur lining inside of it. And she would
Ooh.
play the funkiest music, right? Ohio players and stuff that I love, right? This was like heaven. It's like, you're interested in this? Like, you got all that and you're interested in this? What the hell? And eventually, things built into a crescendo. And in my basement bedroom, one glorious evening, um, I was welcomed to express this part of myself, the sexual part of myself that I had not expressed before. But it was not, as one would say, the perfect event, because obviously I have no idea what I'm doing. And she was not the most compassionate individual. It's like a doctor with a poor bedside manner. like like not putting up with anything that you did wrong or didn't know what to do. So it was not the greatest experience in that sense. However, you are a young man and you are lacking in any self-confidence or any belief in your powers as a man. And this person gives you the opportunity to change that narrative about yourself. So I'm very, very grateful for that. The part of the story that I usually don't share, I don't think I've ever shared the story at all, that I probably wouldn't share with anyone, is that this young woman was a prostitute. I didn't know that at the time. However, after meeting some of her friends later on in this very short relationship, it became very clear that she had extra experience in this
She's a
in this
professional.
exactly exactly. So maybe that's the reason why she was not as giving me the leeway that I needed my first time around. She gets paid for this. What can I say? So that was my experience as far as the physical side of things go. I'll leave it there. I'm sure we'll pick up on other aspects of virginity later, but that was my initiation into, well, my own sexuality as far as sharing that with someone else.
Wow. Honestly, I just thank you for being, just fully you and fully real and fully who you are, because like that's the pieces of you that I just adore. And I think that when people feel comfortable to share exactly what that first time was like, then it can help take away some of the shame or take away some of the mystique, because there's a lot of people out there that have a similar story to what you've said. I've chatted with many guys that were just so nervous about the first time that going with somebody that they could pay actually took the edge off, so that they could, of course you didn't know that at the time, so a different
And
experience.
and it wasn't it was it she didn't ask me to pay. We were under an understanding of mutual. I didn't know she was that was her profession at the time, and she didn't reveal that to me. I had to find that out myself. So it wasn't a situation where I paid for this. It was a mutual coming together on a level of equals, not a professional and an absolute beyond rookie.
First timer. That's she caught you caught her attention from across the road at that bus stop each morning, and then she's
Apparently.
like, you know what, I like chocolate, so what's good? Oh, wow. um yeah, I think that it was good to start with the context of uh the household that you lived in before entering into this space. And yeah, I grew up in also a religious household. I wouldn't say devout, not to the same extent that your family that you shared were or are, but go to church every Sunday and repent your sins. Join the church choir and be a good girl. That without even the sexual undertone of that yet, even as a child, kind of growing up with these are the things that good girls do, and these are the things that bad girls do. Um, and I had a very, very, very close family friend that almost become like a second mom to me, a second parent, or I guess a third parent, if you want to call it that. And she was very religious. And that was her, like, she was a born again Christian. It was her reason to get up in the morning and what made her life make sense, and her guiding light, or her North Star. And, as I entered, 12, 13, she really made a point of talking to me about sexuality, because my mom didn't feel as comfortable doing that. And yeah, the the imagery that she left me with was every person that you have sex with before you meet your husband, again, very heteronormative, they take a bite of your apple. And when you have enough people who have bitten into your apple, when you get to your husband, all you have left is a rotting core. So, I wish I could say that that was, the only time I've heard that kind of a story, but I've heard that story so many times. Even friends of mine who are in the Catholic school, which I wasn't, but they would have this practice in their classes, health class, and it would be a piece of tape that people pass around. And the more people that touch your piece of tape, the less sticky it is. It loses its reason
Adhesiveness.
for being, right? um, so there's just been a whole slew of this sort of belief system around women's sexuality, and that's a piece of what Christopher and I are going to explore in the next 4 weeks. Is what has this concept of the virgin archetype meant? Like, where did it come from? What are the religious and cultural underpinnings? What even are the biological underpinnings of, women being able to get pregnant before the pill, and, being on the receiving end of risk when it comes to getting pregnant or more susceptible to STIs? There's a lot at stake in the female body in heteronormative sex. Um, and I would say the same in gay man relationships, but certainly within female female relationships, there's still risk, but it's far, 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 far lower. Um, and so, what has all of those elements over time told women about their sexuality? It's almost that it's been, you know, definitely sinful, risky, something to be guarded at all cost, that if you give it away freely, it will taint you. Um, so those were the kind of my parameters growing up. And so I was very keen to make sure that my apple stayed full and juicy and in prime condition under God. um, and thankfully, I would say, although I'm sure that my mom would think otherwise, I fell into the wrong group of friends in junior high. And I say wrong group of friends, but I was one of the pack. Like, we were the risk takers and the rebels, and challenged authority, definitely like experimental and all that stuff. So all of the horrors for a religious mother. And so, yeah, in my group of girls in junior high, in grade 9, at that point, we were. It was like the cool thing in our group to be thinking about, when were we going to have sex with someone, and rather than it being something lost, it was what would be something gained, which would be like this introduction to womanhood, this introduction to adulthood, this introduction to pleasure. um, and so there was a lot of hype in my friend group to go through that experience. And so a lot of contradicting messages from my core beliefs and how I was raised, and then my emerging new beliefs based off of my friends and the people that I trusted, and like the rise of a different point in our pop culture, and what women's lib had almost provided the pathway towards, which I'm really thankful for. And so when it actually came to the time that I lost my virginity, again, I even hate those words. And Christopher and I are going to dive into that into the show, like losing as, again, like a prize to be kept for as long as possible. So we're going to unpack that a bit in the shows. But it is used universally, so I'm using it now. Um, I thought that it would be everything that the hype was about, right? Like, that it was going to be this great thing. I'm going to feel amazing, yada, yada, yada. Thankfully, because of sex ed and learning about STIs and pregnancy and all that kind of stuff, I was very careful. Like, definitely having a condom was like a must. And so I'm really grateful to sex ed that I wasn't going in blind or like unsafe. I think that that really helped me to feel at least protected in myself and knowing like the physical boundaries that I was trying to protect. Um, and you know, nice guy, nice setting. It ended way too quickly. I can't imagine that he was much more experienced than I was because we were in, our like mid-teens, edging towards later teens. And I remember afterwards, probably mostly because it was done so fast and I didn't get a lot out of it. I couldn't even try to prolong the experience. Um, I felt absolutely hollow afterwards. Like the just like the dirtiest, like it was like a piece of me was gone that I could never get back. And that was horrifying for me. Um, and that is within a context of like that like I had an enthusiastic yes, I wasn't pressured into it. It was something that I wanted to do. Like it was all of the things that I think about when it comes to consent and what active consent means. Um, but I think that the reason why I felt so much heartache afterwards, first of all, I didn't orgasm, I didn't get all of the good stuff. And I think all those things that were in my childhood were just flashing before my eyes. And all of the things that are built up around, okay, well, now that it's gone and I can never get it back, quote unquote, like, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my worth? What does it mean for my sense of self? What does it mean for my sexual like endeavors moving forward? And so I feel that had I had a different upbringing and understanding of what these moments can mean, um, that it wouldn't have been such a defeating experience. And I just like the world that I want to fight for, and the world that we're trying to create through this podcast is one where women understand and love and embrace their sexuality for themselves. Not that you have to have sex at any point, but that you understand your body and your body's capacity, and that you're in touch with this power source. And I'm not saying power source to try to manipulate people. I'm talking about a power source for your own longevity, your own physical health, your own mental health. And I do think that we're getting closer to that as a society. Um, Christopher and I have chatted about this a bit that, we have on one swing of the pendulum the virgin, right? The stay, asexual for as long as possible until you get your lifetime partner. And then all of a sudden, you should be ready to go for that person and change everything that you think about sex. And then the other side is this very hypersexualized world that we live in. And women's liberation, I think, has really sold that if you're sexually available and you see sex as fun and flirty, and that you're sexually available, that makes you liberated, when really I think that that's also hurting women. That one of the best ways that I've heard this talked about is really understanding your boundaries around sexuality and being able to act on those boundaries.
Well, I
So
think
these
that's, yeah, I think that is the thing that we are attempting to have people understand, that the virgin and the virginity has been made into a social construct. However, it is actually an individual decision and an individual experience. And the individual can interpret that for themselves without the burden of a social context that draws into reality all the things you say. You only felt those things because you related back to your upbringing and the things you were told of how this experience will change you. That's the heavy part of all this. And the other thing I wanted to really emphasize, and I think you and I agree on this, is that one moment, as brief as it might be, as hollow as it might feel, can cascade into the rest of a woman's sexual experiences. This one, this one event becomes a switch that is, like you say, an apple being rotten to the core feeling for a woman for the rest of her life, her sexual encounters for the rest of her life. I mean, these are the kind of things you don't think of. And I think it's different for men. That's why it's so great that Heather and I are together, is that we can reflect on both sides of this coin from experience, our own experiences. Not that it's the same for every man, and not the same for every woman. However, there are, because of the social construct that we're all, like floating in the same construct through life, there's a lot of similarities that I know that men would feel and women would feel. And these are the kinds of things we want to have a conversation about, not to dictate how you should feel, but to open the door to bring down some of the shame and some of the taboo around this topic when it so clearly impacts so many people's lives on a decision they've made, acts they've done that haunt them for the rest of their life. Do they need to?
Yeah. And I think that, when you're saying that, Christopher, like what hits home for me in the longevity of how this can feel is, for me at least, not so much being tainted by that one moment, but that the premise of sexuality within this virgin construct remains.
Yeah.
Whether it's your the first cut is the deepest, I'll say that. But if you have that mentality, and we're seeing it today in pop culture with, songs talking about a woman's body count, and the lower the count, like what's between the lines is the more virtuous or the more desirable she is. um and I mean, of course, there's a lot of underpinnings for why you know that would be esteemed in our culture. um so to take people, especially women and men and people of all genders, on a journey of the outstanding and withstanding taboos around women's sexuality. And certainly, from a lot of women that I've talked to who are engaged with understanding their sexual health, and within like within her boundaries of what feels right for her, with the right safety, the right understanding of consent. um, Even with all of those things in place, for a woman to have a sexual pulse, it can ruin her career. It can taint her within a friend circle. And so again, like, that's something that I'm really passionate about on this show, is that it's been a very purposeful effort to keep women's sexual power in the hands of men. And it isn't serving women, it hasn't, and it still isn't. So um, I just can't wait to walk on this journey with our guests and learn a little bit about their virgin story, how that's felt for you in like your lead up to the act. And I've chatted with a lot of women who are into same sex relationships. I'm pansexual, so I've dated men and women and people of all genders. And a lot of folks within those relationships would say, like, let's say that they were trying to mask that they're homosexual. They wouldn't say that their first time was with a male partner or the opposite partner, that the first time that they actually felt like they lost their virginity was with someone of the same sex, with somebody that they really loved and felt a deep connection with. And that just goes to show you how the definition itself of that moment or the several moments that it's meant in your life. Like, that's what Christopher and I really want to hear about. And some of the guests that we're having on our show have dived right into that, asking women, what does this word even mean to you? And what were the points in your life where you felt you either quote unquote lost your virginity or moved through that, passing into a different phase of adulthood?
I heard an interesting definition of what losing or giving away or sharing your virginity. It should be, for women, it should be the first time that a partner gives you an orgasm.
Mm,
That's when it starts for you.
ooh,
Mhm.
fire. I love that. Yes, yes, yes. Heather approved.
So we are open to ideas and thoughts, and anything that adds to the conversation that brings new life to what has unfortunately been a very, very heavy topic for so many people. And it's about, you know what it is? It's about giving back freedom for your own sexuality, however you want to define it. And it starts with that word and that act. That's where it really begins to really be impactful. You can fool around and have a good time prior to that, but that one act, that crossing that marginal line is like changes everything.
Yeah, and we've certainly put a lot of weight on that as a society. So
Mhm.
if you feel that weight, trust me, these next 4 episodes are for you. If you are looking to reimagine what this next stage of your sexual life is like, I really think that there's a lot in here for everyone who's engaged with the push and pull of desire, of your sexual orientation, your just loving your body. There's going to be a lot of elements that we go into that I'm really excited to dive deeper. So come check us out. We're so excited for our big series in 2024. And this is the Virgin series. You can look out for the Beauty and the Bitch, as Christopher said, later on in the year. But starting for the spring equinox, the 4 weeks following that, you can tune in to VBB, and we'd love to get to know you better.
Because we call the show
The Virgin
The Beauty
and the Bitch. And I've got my flowering or deflowering earrings on. I'm reflowering myself. You're going to want to check this out.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it.